Okay, thank you. So Kristina has explained the timeline for closure and the financial management. We'll now focus on the closure document, which have to be submitted by 15th of February or latest March, 1st of March 2025. So the closure documents are, as you can see on the first hand, the final implementation report for ERDF, ESF, Cohesion Fund, and it will also be for IPA-CBC subject to the adoption of the ongoing revision of the closure guidelines. And on the other hand, we have what we call the assurance package, which is composed of the accounts prepared by the certifying authority, the management declaration and annual summary prepared by the managing authority, and the audit opinion and control report prepared by the audit authority. So next slide, please. So let's first have a look at the final implementation report. We'll go through the structure, the deadline for submission and approval, and some important issues to be included, such as the indicators. We'll go also through the performance framework indicators. We'll talk about, well, we'll mention major project, but that's not applicable to ETC. Then phased operation, non-functioning operation, and ongoing national investigation and suspended operations. But I'll go through these separately now or later. So we can move. Thank you. So for the final implementation report, the structure is included in the annexes of the implementing regulation 2015/207. So for the programs under investment for growth and job, it's the Annex 5, and for the ETC programs, it's Annex 10. There are some new requirements which are under discussions, and it is the necessity to report on the use made of additional REACT-EU pre-financing. This was introduced by the amendment of the 1420 CPR in April 22, but it seems that in practice, member states did not make use of it for ETC programs. And there is the other necessity to report on the fulfillment.
Using more the simplified cost options.
All right, okay. So the second requirement actually is not applicable to ETC programs. So we can move to the next slide. So now, as regards the acceptance and the deadline for acceptance of the final implementation report, as we said before, it is very important that the final report is accepted because it's a requirement for the final balance. So for the ERDF, the ESF, and the Cohesion Fund and IPA-CBC, as I said before, the submission is 15 February 2025. It is important to comply with the deadlines because failure to comply with the deadline might have the negative effect of the automatic decommitment and also some financial corrections. So now the EC has 5 months to make observation. The member states have 2 months plus another 2 months to reply. And it's only when the observation have been correctly addressed that the final implementation report is deemed to be accepted. If there are no observation within the 5 months, it is also accepted. So we can move to the next slide. So now let's talk about the common program specific indicators. So the FIR also contains data on the output and result indicators, and these are to be included in table 1 and 2 of Annex 10 of the regulation 2015/207. The values to be reported are those which have been achieved by the end of 2023. However, in practice, output delivered until the closure of the document, so until February 2025, can be reported, but this is not applicable to performance framework indicators, but only for common and specific program indicators. Member states asked for the significant, what means significant different deviation. It is a deviation above or below 20% of the set targets. So if the indicators are either higher or above the target, it should be explained in the table in the column observation. The final implementation report must also contain any information affecting the performance of the program. Now, about the revision of the targets, as Kristina said before, it is recommended not to revise them beyond 2022, except for cases where the changes are due in changes of allocation for a given priority or in case of phasing. So in these two cases, member state can request a modification of DOP by 31st of September, end of September 2023. And finally, the guidelines also explain how to report on the phased operation and the non-functioning operations. For the phased operation, it's only the output actually delivered in the 1420 period or 1420 phase that must be reported. And for the non-functioning operations, only output actually delivered should be reported in the FIR. So in certain cases, it can be 0, but the output will be assessed after the extra year. So by February 15 February 2026 or 2027, if it is subject to the adoption of the closure guideline revision. I didn't see the comment from Dirk. Is it something else? Okay, I'll go on. So,
FIR has the same content.
So Dirk mentioned a comment. FIR has the same content as the annual implementation report of 2019. See Article 25 and 46.2, referring to, well, I think this is to be, this is a bit technical. Financial instruments are not relevant for ETC. Yes, that's true. So now we can move to the performance framework indicators. So the EC will assess the achievements of the targets for indicators in the performance based on the value reported in the FIR, and these are to be reported in Annex 10, Table 3. The revision of the target is only possible in specific cases for the performance framework indicators. So those cases are in duly justified cases, such as a significant change in the economic, environmental, and labor market. This is point 5 of the Annex 2 of the CPR. Another possibility is when the revision is a consequence of changes in allocation for a given priority, and in case of phasing of certain operation, as we already said before. Now, what is meant by serious failure for the performance framework indicators? So this is explained in the Article 22.7 of the CPR. A serious failure is assessed in accordance with the criteria set out in Article 6.3 and 4 of implementing regulation 215/2014. This is a bit technical, but let me explain. So if there are no more than 2 indicators in the performance framework related to a priority, and any of these 2 indicators has failed to achieve 65%, this is considered a case of serious failure. And if there are more than 2 indicators in the performance framework related priority, and at least 2 of these indicators have failed to achieve at least 65% of the value by the end of 2023, that's the other case. But the Commission shall not apply financial correction if the failure to achieve the target is due to the impact of socio-economic and environmental factors, or to significant changes in the economic and environmental conditions in the member state concerned, or because of reasons of force majeure seriously affecting the implementation of the priorities concerned. This is in line with the third subparagraph of Article 22.7 of the CPR. So, subject to case-by-case analysis, the consequences of the war in Ukraine or of the COVID-19 outbreak may be considered as triggering socio-economic factors or causing significant changes in the economic condition of the member state, which both cases may result in serious failure to achieve the targets. So in such case, financial correction may not be applied, but this is the case-by-case approach. Then for the non-functioning operation and the performance framework indicators, if member state authorities decide to include expenditure linked to the non-functioning operations in the accounts, it is possible that the lack of output affects adversely the achievement of the target of the performance framework. So if the non-functioning operation results in a serious failure to achieve the targets selected in the performance framework, the commitment by the member state to complete and put in function the operation by 15 February 2026 or 2027, subject to the revision of the closure guidelines. This commitment to complete the operation will be assimilated as a corrective measure in order to achieve the target, and this so it will not be there will not be financial correction in that case. So okay, so that's for this slide. We can move to the next one. In the final implementation report, there is also a section to report on major project, but this is not applicable to our knowledge to ETC programs. So we can move to next one. So what to do when the operation are unfinished? So as you know, at the time of the submission of the closure documents, all operations have to be functioning. So that means that they have to be physically completed or fully implemented or contribute to the objective of the relevant priority. If this is not the case, there are two possibilities offered to the programs. Either they can phase them into 21-27 programming period, or they can declare them non-functioning and realize them within 1 year later or 2 years, subject to the revision of the closure guidelines. So let's first have a look at the phasing of operations. Next, thank you. So operations can be phased if they respect a number of conditions established in the closure guidelines and in Article 118 of the CPR that you have on the slide. So that is that the two phases must be identifiable from a financial point of view. The total cost must be above or equal to 5 million. There should be a clear audit trail to avoid double declaration. And the second phase must be eligible under the 21-27 programming period. And finally, the member state undertakes to complete them. Now, with the fast care proposal, there are some new conditions which will be introduced for phasing, provided that they respect the conditions of Article 118A. So project selected must be selected and have started before the 29th of June 2022, and the total cost must be equal or above 1 million. So the threshold is lower. But for operation which started before 29th of June 2022. So member states must submit the list of phased operation using the Annex 1 of the closure guidelines. If the member state undertake to to use this list, they commit to put them in function by the deadline to submit the assurance package for the final accounting year of the next programming period, so by the 21-27 programming period. And it is important to say that the failure to complete a phased operation as planned may give rise to a financial correction for both phases of the operation. Let's now move to the non-functioning operation. So member states are invited to exclude from the account the non-functioning operations, but subject to the revision of the closure guidelines, conditions to, well, if they decide to include the non-functioning operation, they have to respect certain conditions, which are being discussed now with the revision of the closure guidelines. So until now, the total cost of the operation must be equal or above 2 million. It would be lowered to 1 million. The total cost of the non-functioning operation must not exceed 10% of the total expenditure of the program. This will be increased to 15%. And finally, the deadline to complete the operation is, for the moment, 15 February 2026, and it might be delayed by an extra year, subject to the ongoing revision of the closure guidelines. So, next slide, please. And now we move to the ongoing national investigations. The third annex of the FIR is the annex with the operation affected by the ongoing national investigation or suspended by legal proceedings or administrative appeal having suspensory effect. We had already this type of operation in the 713 closure, but the treatment in 1420 is different. If the program authority decide to include them in the account, they will have to be reported in Annex 3 of the final implementation report, and the amount related to this operation will be included in the calculation of the final balance. So that means that the Commission will pay them. However, the Member State will have to inform on the outcome of this investigation or the proceedings afterwards. If finally the amount related to this operation are found to be illegal, the Commission will proceed with a recovery. And then after the submission of the final application for an interim payment, no expenditure related to this operation can be declared. So it is the final date of eligibility is the same. It's not extended. Voilà. Well, I think that's it for this section.